Welcome to the first video in my series of reviews I'm going to be doing in 2018. My New Year's resolution this year was that I would review one film each month all year that came out pre-1970. And my very first one is 12 Angry Men, released in 1957, starring Henry Fonda, who's one man serving his jury duty amongst 11 others who have just heard a murder case. They've gone over all the details in court, they've heard all of the arguments, they've heard the defense. Now they're in a room trying to find out if this boy is guilty or not. If he's guilty, they're going to send him to the electric chair and he will be killed. It's a very young kid. We get one shot of him early on in the film, and just from that one shot, we immediately feel sympathy. Just this one image of this boy is all we get to see of him, and we know something isn't right. Early in the film, the 12 guys think, hey, maybe we can get out of here pretty quick. One of them has tickets to a baseball game. All of them seem to think the kid's guilty. So they call their first vote, and sure enough, Henry Fonda is the only man there who thinks there's reasonable doubt. And he spends the next 90 minutes of this film trying to convince the 11 other men that that doubt could be real. The first time I saw this movie, I was probably 11 or 12. I was very young. I was over at my sister's house, dog sitting. We had a golden retriever at the time, and my sister was going to be out for a few days, and so I was helping her out by making sure that our golden retriever was taken care of, and she was fed, and she went potty and all that stuff. And there was a really terrible thunderstorm, and I was watching Dragon Ball Z on TV. My sister had satellite TV, and the storm knocked out the satellite, and suddenly Dragon Ball Z was no longer an option. So I began to sift through her collection of VHS tapes, and I came across 12 Angry Men. Now, 11, 12-year-old kid in the 90s isn't exactly excited about watching a black and white movie, but I wanted to because I thought the plot was interesting. And I popped in that VHS tape, and if you had told that 11-year-old, hey, you're going to be happy the power went out for the TV, and you're going to be happy that you didn't get to see Dragon Ball Z today because this movie is that good, he wouldn't have believed you. But that 11-year-old kid was riveted from scene one, and this guy talking to you today still feels the same way. This movie is a masterpiece. That term gets thrown around a lot. It's a very easy thing to say about great films like this, but this movie is one of the best. This is one of the very few films that I will call perfect. Ridley Scott's original Alien, perhaps Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jaws, 2001: A Space Odyssey. I mean, these are films that are flawless in my mind. Movies that just, they don't have, you can't find anything wrong with them. I mean, film is subjective in the long run, and you can say, I don't like Raiders of the Lost Ark because it isn't for me. But if you're the type of person who really likes to examine film and who wants to write or make films, you look to films like 12 Angry Men as the example of how to do it perfectly. The way Sidney Lumet, the director, helmed this film was maximum claustrophobia, maximum suspense. We learn early on it's the hottest day of the year. Every single character is sweating, save for one juror who says he doesn't sweat. Except for the very beginning and the very end, it is all in one location, and you don't have much room to move. So Sidney Lumet used everything at his disposal to make this film as interesting and as compelling as possible. He helms this like it's an action film, but all he can use is the camera movements and the characters that are in the film. There are so many shots in 12 Angry Men that send chills down my spine as Henry Fonda continues to try to chip away at why other people in this room don't have reasonable doubt. And there are moments that come about that are just some of the best in cinematic history. As the 12 guys filter into the room at the beginning, you may not notice this while watching it because it's just so seamless, but this is all one take. The camera flows through the room, and we get introduced to every single character, and we learn an integral piece of information about each man in this shot. And the way Sidney Lumet positions the camera with the characters, you begin to feel like you're watching multiple shots. This is something that Spielberg does very well. He puts the characters in different positions and moves the camera all around the room to create wides, mids, and close-ups, even though there aren't any cuts. And 12 Angry Men has a great example of this just in the opening. And we learn about this case through these characters and the way they talk about it. Since the film begins with the court case ending and the jurors filtering into this room, we only learn the details of the case through what the members of the jury say. And so it makes us feel like we're members of the jury. At the beginning, you're like, okay, yeah, it seems like it's pretty obvious. The kid's guilty. All right, convince me otherwise. And then Henry Fonda says, hey, I just think it's possible. What do you mean it's not possible? Well, you saw what the kid was doing. I'm Lee J. Cobb, and I'm a genius actor. You can't say I'm not. You work your heart out for these kids. I joke, but Lee J. Cobb is phenomenal here. He plays a very, very damaged character, and as the film continues, you begin to realize that there is some personal vengeance, perhaps, underneath the surface of why he would like to see this kid go to the chair. And as Henry Fonda continues to pressure people who think the kid is guilty, you learn that perhaps it's not all facts for some of these people. Some of them might have other agendas. And there's an amazing aspect of this film that deals with personal prejudice, when one character in particular continues to reference this kid who comes from a slum and is very poor as one of them. You begin to realize, okay, you have other motives. And there's another member of the jury who also has lived in a slum his whole life. And so this creates some amazing tension and some really beautiful character work. There's also really haunting dialogue that sticks with you long after the film, particularly this one encounter in the bathroom where Henry Fonda is washing his face. And one of the guys is in there and he's like, hey, supposing this kid really did knife his father and you all talk us out of it. It's like, oh shit, yeah, that would suck. Because by then you've started to sort of side with Fonda as he expresses his doubt. When that guy says that, you're thinking to yourself, yeah, that would be bad. The film is wise to show why Henry Fonda's position is smart and why he's clever to have reasonable doubt. But you can also understand why each member who thinks the kid is guilty thinks that. Remarkably, except for a few phrases characters say, this movie isn't dated. That's large in part due to the fact that it all takes place in one room and everyone's wearing a suit or some sort of nice clothing that has remained sort of a in-style form of clothing for a really long time. But you can actually watch this movie in 2018 and except for the fact that it's black and white and you have the knowledge that it was made in the 50s, it doesn't seem that way. Nobody talks like this, see? Hey, listen to me. I'm going to tell you this thing. I'm going to smoke this cigarette. Now, if you've never seen 12 Angry Men, I'm going to mention a few specific moments that I love that are spoilery. I implore you to please see the film. Obviously, I am recommending it. If you've never seen a black and white movie, because I'm sure some of my viewers haven't, and I'm not going to judge you for that, if you've never seen a black and white movie, make this be the first one you see because it's one of the best. We're going to talk about a few specific moments I love. One of them being the fact that Fonda starts to bait more excitable members of the jury into saying things that prove his case, like this scene.
Perhaps you'd like to pull the switch.
For this kid, you bet I would.
I feel sorry for you. What it must feel like to want to pull the switch. Ever since you walked into this room, you've been acting like a self-appointed public avenger. You want to see this boy die because you personally want it, not because of the facts. You're a sadist.
Give him out!
You don't really mean you'll kill me, do you?
Every single time I see this movie, without fail, that gives me chills. It's so brilliantly executed. The way he uses the camera, Sidney Lumet, to position it around people's faces, to create the feeling of tension or the feeling of whoever is in power in that moment. For most of the beginning of the film, when Henry Fonda is trying to convince the others, the camera is above him or at level with him. Towards the end of the film, however, as he gets other people to side with him, you see that camera going lower, and now he's above the camera, superior. It makes his enemies, so to speak, in the room feel inferior. I mean, it's genius. This movie's perfect. There is not a single thing wrong with it. And one of the best moments in movie history is the switchblade sequence, where Henry Fonda says, look, this supposed one and only knife that this kid killed his dad with, I found one myself. And he just slams it into the table right next to the exhibit. And the script is so wise to use specific reasons why each member of the jury might find the kid guilty or not guilty based off of their personal life. Like one of the last few guys has glasses, and the ultimate point that gets under his skin is the woman who supposedly saw this kid do it had those marks on her nose that glasses cause, meaning that she probably wasn't wearing her glasses when she rolled over in bed at night and saw this murder happen, allegedly. And when that point is brought out, the juror who wears glasses is like, I'm convinced, not guilty. The screenplay is one of the best. This movie is one of the best. Every single time I watch it, I feel inspired. It's shocking how great a film is in one location. It's honestly mesmerizing. And the back and forth between protagonist Henry Fonda and antagonist Lee J. Cobb is so well done that at the end of the film, a simple gesture of helping the other man into his suit coat is beautiful and touching. And as the men disperse out of the court and one of them introduces himself and they both say their names, you realize, oh shit, they've never said their names once. You don't realize these things because the film is just that great. If you have never seen 12 Angry Men, you gotta see it. 12 Angry Men, of course, gets an A+. Guys, thank you so much, as always, for watching. I'm going to be doing more of these reviews every month, pre-1970s films. I want to bring more attention to this era of filmmaking because I feel like YouTube has become a 1980s and 90s and early 2000s cesspool, which is fine. That's a cool era, but there needs to be more talk about films like this because these are the films that shaped the landscape of movies today. Guys, thank you so much, as always, for watching. And if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.